Hello gamers, it is I, the guy that uploads subpar shitposts every once in a while. Welcome to another one. At this point you're probably expecting fast-paced map gameplay with an onset of memes, flickering lights and ear-raping noises, accompanied by soundtracks from back when times were better. But instead you have me and my sleep-inducing voice. So, where's sunny Sweden? Let's just say that due to my lazy-ass scheduling, poor life choices, and Twitch being such a great service with VODs only being up there for like a week, as well as me forgetting to download all of them, that video is not gonna happen. Instead, let me present to you the story of how I managed to lead the people of to the promised land, to restore the Roman Empire to its former glory, and all it took was some mass slaughter, a lot of corruption, and a set of color crayons. Our journey begins in the Altai Mountains, ancestral homeland of the Oirat people. As was the case in the predecessor to this, we started off as the nation of Oirat. With the appropriate religion and required government form, Oirat is the most suitable candidate for what we sought to bring upon these cursed lands. Our military was strong, our economy stable, our leading Khan a legend. And before we knew it, we had made our way through the steppes, leaving behind a trail of destruction, riddled with the corpses of our fellow horse people and their unfortunate allies, as well as our Khan, who lied down for a nap before deciding that he really didn't want to wake up anymore. Soon enough, we arrived on the doorstep of civilization. At this point, it became quite clear that our once economically superior nation had stagnated over the duration of its rampaging conquest, leaving our financial state in shambles, as we struggled to pay for the unreasonable number of foreigners who we hired to fill our ranks. We moved our capital away from the desolate lands of the Altai Mountains to the a bit less desolate lands of Circassia. With this, we successfully established a connection to realms more technologically advanced than ours, giving us an opportunity to find new allies in hopes that they would aid us against our next target. Let's take a moment to talk about strategy here. At this stage of the recording process, I had already spent multiple attempts on this war. Our nation was in no state to fight an enemy of this magnitude. We had less forces, less cannon fodder, an inferior tech group, and crippling debt. On top of all that, we also had no friends. As it turns out, getting allies as a nation appeared almost impossible, as seemingly no one wanted to form ties with our great snake rat horde. So, I tried by myself, and failed, and then tried again, and went bankrupt, and failed. But then I remembered, nations with Tengri religion have access to a unique mechanic which allows them to forsake their own gods and dubiously take on a secondary syncretic faith. This gave us the opportunity to shove aside Tengri to bask in the light of Allah, just temporarily, an act that impressed the Mamluks so much they had no other choice but to ally us immediately. With our newly acquired mighty friend, victory seemed almost achievable. Following careful preparation, war was back on the menu. We snatched the war goal and marched straight for Constantinople, with no one really stopping us from doing so for the time being. As the Ottomans were still busy fighting another war, the rest of the Ottoman army was busy skiing in the Caucasus Mountains. One fort after another fell as the Oirat horde swept through the Balkans, although it being a rather costly and corrupting sweep. The Ottoman AI started to suffer from a severe case of skill issue as they began to run around aimlessly.
Farewell.
Ming decided to break their tributary overlord status with us for seemingly no reason. This had me a bit frightened, to be honest, since it basically meant that once we'd inevitably go bankrupt, our whole nation would be free real estate. But there was nothing we could do about it now. A peace deal had to be sent. And boy, what a peace deal it was. After several hours of failure, the First Ottoman War had concluded rather easily, leaving the lion's share of Byzantine lands in our hands. The next task on our list was a process of metamorphosis. To successfully get us started, we had to convert the majority of all cores, not just the ones we owned, but all Byzantine cores to Tengri, to ensure that our released, ready-to-play vassal would be of the right religion. Our nation was on the brink of total collapse, since the only way to keep our economy afloat was to debase our currency over and over, earning us more corruption, which surely wouldn't have lasting consequences on the future of our game. About 20 years of coring, converting, inflating corruption, and a quick genocide later, we were ready. With a single mouse click, we ascended to true Roman. At first glance, this Byzantium start didn't even seem that bad, until you realize you're 40 years into the game with 44 corruption, a fuck ton of inflation, and the Ottomans have already recovered. Basically, the pain was just about to begin. After gaining our independence throughout a rather uneventful war and failing to convince the Mamluks of our cause, we turned to the Polish for an alliance. On top of a couple of loans, we still had about 20 corruption to go, so I needed the Polish to do the heavy lifting for us, which luckily they did. Another Ottoman skill issue and several close battles later, the war finally concluded with our economy taking another massive slap to the face. At this point we were in a pretty precarious situation. We had maxed our loans, were on the verge of bankruptcy, had war-exhausted allies, yet another Ottoman war was lurking right around the corner, so after bullying one of our Balkan rivals into submission, we went to war with the Turks again. By then, however, all we were really fighting was a mere shadow of its former self. I say that, yet I somehow still managed to accumulate a suffocating amount of debt during the war, putting our nation through yet another financial hardship. I was dedicated to solving this without the need to force economic collapse, so I came up with a strategy that would allow us to slowly repay our debt and build up our nation at the same time, and then I went bankrupt about 5 seconds later. Boy do I love bankruptcy. Watching your army turn into a puddle of wet noodles in terms of fighting capability is one of the game's many blessings. Simultaneously to the end of our bankruptcy, we had finally managed to get rid of our corruption, acquired a gold mine, and we were catching up in terms of ideas. Things were looking good and stable for the first time in this playthrough. At one point, the Ottomans decided they really didn't want to exist anymore, shattering into multiple pieces shortly after, the conquest of which would inevitably give way to an overarching and permanent threat so immense it could crash the entire game with the sheer force of its lack. I'm of course talking about everyone's favorite mechanic, coalitions.